Welcome to IT Mastermind Talks, your access to insights and experiences from thought leaders in the IT services industry and those that support the industry. Our podcast features not only the seasoned professionals charting their start to exit journey, but also the key contributors who help ensure their success. We delve into the diverse challenges encountered within the IT services realm, encompassing both professional hurdles and personal obstacles. Join us, be part of our growing community, and engage in the conversation. Hosted by Ian Markram of LoadingGrowth.
Hello, good day. Today I've got Richard Hunt from Turnkey Consulting, a long-term client of ours that we've been working with for quite a few years in different regions of the world. Richard's calling in from UK today. So early morning, he's been having coffee. I've been having a few glasses of water. So Richard, welcome to the podcast today. I appreciate having you on board.
Good morning, Ian. Good evening, Ian.
It's great to have you. Look, so we're just going to go through what we would do in these sessions is we just talk a bit about, where you come from, the background, just to give everyone a bit of an idea of, where you started out. And I do know that you have an amazing story to tell, one that is about your first time as being an entrepreneur. You told it about a year ago. I was on a call with your team and you talked about the chickens and the enterprises. So how about starting right off there quickly in your first enterprise and working as entrepreneur?
Yeah, sure. Well, I've told this story many times. I guess, so when I was about 12 years old, I said to my dad, can I have a raise of my pocket money? I was sort of speaking to some of my friends. I was getting 50 pence a week and they were getting £5. And he said, well, I'll think about it. So he went away and thought about it. We lived in a sort of rural area and had a little bit of land at the back of the house. My dad came back to me a week later and said, right, I've bought you 12 chickens. And if you look after these chickens and collect the eggs and put the eggs outside in an honesty box, then people drive past the house quite a lot because there was a riding stable nearby. And if you look after them properly, you're going to get £6 a week when everyone else is getting 5. So I kind of thought, well, okay, sounds like harder work than everyone else is putting in pounds, but I'll do it. I ended up kind of selling the eggs, but then I used to buy more chickens with the eggs. And I ended up with about 120 chickens eventually.
Brilliant.
And I was getting about £60 a week pocket money. I was also selling eggs to Sainsbury's, one of the local supermarkets here. So, it was quite an enterprise for a sort of 13, 14-year-old boy at the time. And then I kind of ran into my first experience of risk management when I started having foxes take them. And also my brother pilfering his pocket money out of my pocket money as well. So a little bit of fraud going.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
It's
introduction to entrepreneurship and also to risk management.
Well, that's great. I really appreciate that, Richard. And it is amazing because it takes a different person to be an entrepreneur. And it's not everyone can be an entrepreneur, I believe as well. And it's not easy, as you know. It's very difficult running an IT services organization, especially one of your size. They have challenges every day. Wouldn't know what you're going through at the moment, but it's a lot. I can tell you that much. We're gonna just talk a bit about your professional career. How did you get into sort of IT services?
So I mean, I took that sort of entrepreneurship forward with me when I basically applied for, after my university degree, I did economics and law at Exeter. By the way, I'd recommend any entrepreneur to do a bit of law at university if they can. If you're aspiring to that, then it's a really useful skill to have in your back pocket. It saves a lot of money.
Definitely.
So I left I left Exeter at university and started out at PwC as a graduate. And they put me into SAP security projects, doing consulting in that space. And I'd said to myself for a long time that whatever PwC taught me, I would try and strike out on my own doing eventually. So that's kind of how I got into the IT services space on a graduate program with PwC.
Brilliant. That's it's a big way a lot of people get through is through one of those graduate programs. It's a bit sad to see those graduate programs falling away with AI and everything else coming through as well. So let's just go on to the next stage. How did you actually go from there to starting Turnkey?
Yeah, so I mean, as I say, I always kind of thought whatever they taught me, I'd try and set my own business up doing it. I didn't necessarily expect them to teach me something that only massive companies did, because that made it quite a challenge to get into those massive companies. But I got a sabbatical from PwC for a couple of years and spent time down in Australia working independently. The plan was to come back to my original role when I was at PwC, after spending a couple of years in Australia. But when I came back, things had changed at PwC. They'd sold the consulting practice to IBM. So some of the work we were doing was less obvious as to how we were going to do some of the more interesting stuff we'd been doing. And so I basically decided that I was going to strike out on my own, initially kind of contracting, but with, from the outset, an objective of building a brand around doing. And so I got a contract with British Airways and was doing that project. But as Turnkey Consulting, set myself a brand and a website up, and kind of got a knapsack full of flyers and set off on my journey as an entrepreneur.
Brilliant, brilliant. Look, I just saw your brand was updated recently as well, and congratulations. Looks really good. I like the new age, new spin on it. So well done to the team that's doing that as well. So congratulations on that.
Thanks.
So how did you get your first client? Because a lot of people want to sort of start out as you did and then work on to, the first thing is how to get paid. How did you get your first client? And can you share, what that was like?
Yeah, so look, I think it was a combination of two things, really. So my very first client was actually me working as an independent contractor. But, from the outset, I had the mindset that I was going to build a brand, and that kind of gave me a little bit of capital. I think you've got to take some hits somewhere along the line as an entrepreneur. So, you can't be a contractor taking every penny home, putting every penny towards, whatever you want to spend it on, and then expect to build a business around that. I.e., contracting money that I was getting to build a coffer up to allow me to some working capital to pay contractors, which was my next sort of step, was to try and find other kind of gigs that I could be doing independently, but then I was going to quality assure that work and have somebody do the work for me. I wasn't quite ready to take payroll on, but I did want to have some very well curated contractors who were going to work on my behalf. And I was lucky enough to find a couple that I could really trust with my brand and the quality assurance I was trying to put behind it. I think the other kind of break that we had was at the time I was approached by Capgemini to do a role running their security practice for the UK, and I basically suggested that rather than actually do that myself, would they be open to me sort of subcontracting the problem to me, and I would do the work on some of their projects, which they graciously accepted, and that kind of gave me a bit of a break. And I think moreover that the kind of challenge there is finding some partners that you can work with. I think I'm a strong believer, and I know you are, in having a niche as a services business. I think if you don't have a niche, then you put yourself up competitively against the big guys. If you have a niche, then you can be better at that particular niche than the big guys, and that's one of your key differentiators. And I think partnering with those companies and demonstrating your niche, is a good kind of tactic for an early start. And I think the only way that can work is if you're really, really focused on your niche. And as a result, you're able to show those larger services companies that you're not really a competitor to them in the wider context. You're just doing a particular area better than them,
Yeah, and less risk to them as well.
Yeah, you're going to stay in your box. I mean, that's what I think, partnering with bigger services companies, for me, I've always described it as like, we will stay in our box. We've defined the box together, we're staying in it, and therefore you can trust us on your projects because we're not going to try and take any of your work away.
Yeah, thanks for that share. It's awesome to hear that. And you're right. I still to this day, I believe that niche is the only thing that, what are you famous for? That's it in the story, So you start out there, the beginning of the company's taking shape. You sort of like start off as a contractor, you subcontracted a few people to do the work, and you won a client or two, and off you went. And you got your vision, and you got the wind behind you, and you got some momentum happening, which is amazing. What was probably the biggest challenge at that stage, at the early stage for you, Richard?
I mean, I think this will resonate with most people trying to run a services business, certainly striking out. It's sales, isn't it? But ultimately, this is all about sales. I mean, if you don't want to go near sales, then don't bother trying to be an entrepreneur, because it's the one thing that's very, very difficult to get someone else to do for you. And you certainly can't get someone else to do it for you at the beginning. And I think so. Sales was probably the biggest challenge, and learning sales from scratch, as you know, as essentially I was a consultant, was a sort of probably our key challenge, getting into the door of some of these huge companies, because the niche I'd chosen was securing SAP systems, and only huge companies run SAP. So, I don't think my age helped at the time either. I'm saying the same things now as I was then, but I was 28, quite fresh faced, and I think, getting taken seriously as a niche provider with, not a huge amount behind you, particularly when you're trying to get on the supplier list of these enormous companies, is quite challenging. And that's why I think those partnerships helped a lot. If you're focusing on selling to a channel, then that channel can open, a lot of client opportunities for you, and it's a more efficient way to start building your base.
Yeah, great. So then you moved, you got some clients, your brand's going. How about just sort of giving the audience a bit of an overview? What is Turnkey today? Because it's an amazing success story. It's got a great brand. It's in multi locations. Can you just give us a view of what it actually does today and where it is at?
Yeah, sure. So we're a IT security and controls sort of provider. We focus on clients that run SAP primarily, but we do offer services to companies that don't as well these days. Two core service offerings are identity and access management and risk and controls consulting. And we've got about 200 staff across offices in the UK, Germany, France, Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, and the US. And yeah, we're serving, well, the biggest SAP clients going. We do most of our work direct to clients now, but we do have some partnerships similar to how we started out. Yeah. And yeah, it's a multinational company these days that I'm very proud of. I'm mostly proud of the people that helped me make it happen, because ultimately this is a people-based business. It's all down to the people that go out and do client work every day for us. Our kind of differentiators are around not just securing systems, sort of protecting, but also thinking about the people issues in those projects. So linking IT security to performance of the business, helping clients to understand how security and controls can actually be an enabler to the business, an enabler to their strategy. I think those sort of people issues and those kind of performance issues, for us linking security to performance, that's where we differentiate over other companies that are more focused on, I guess, a kind of slightly more negative way of positioning the value of security, about protecting primarily and only. And we really do firmly believe that you can unlock performance for the business and enable the business strategy as a whole through IT security done well.
So that's great. Leads me into the next sort of topic area, which is the growth and development of Turnkey. And I talked about, the biggest thing with IT services is how to, keep on attracting and then retain the customers, the clients. How you guys go about in your model, in your business at the moment, around attract and then retain?
So that's been a journey for us. We've gone through various iterations of how we approach our sort of sales and business development. Actually, we've come sort of full circle on some aspects of that. I think there's two key components, maybe three key components to our kind of sales strategy. One is having a strong sort of marketing presence, and we've hired a professional marketeer last year who's really kind of changed the game for us. We've been through a couple of iterations of marketing support, and the previous ones were good. We weren't doing it badly from my perspective. All of it's been focused around a content-led marketing strategy, which I firmly believe is key for niche providers to really sort of demonstrate your expertise through your thought leadership and content on your particular domain. I'm a big believer in raising the profile of our team and making them superstars in the market. It's my job to retain them, and create a place where they want to apply their trade and where they want to work. But I think it's important not to hide your superstars away from the market. I think it's important to let them be your brand ambassadors. That is ultimately our product as an organization, is the experts we have in the room. And I think that is the other kind of, or the second component to our sales strategy, is to put experts into the sales process wherever possible, and really sort of showcase what we have as a product, as an organization at an early stage. Always talk to clients, throughout the 21 years we've been operating, about the fact that if they engage with us in a sales cycle, they can build their strategy through conversations with the people they will interact with, because those people have got 15, 20 years of expertise in this area, and are consultants. And I think having consultants, inside the sales process is key to demonstrating our sort of niche expertise. And then the third component is what some places call an SDR, sales development representative. But ultimately, someone is going to hit the phones and set up meetings for those experts, set up meetings for people who are running sales functions for us, and recognizing the value of those SDRs and their unique skill set to take all the knocks that nobody else wants to take in the sales cycle.
Sure, for sure.
You've got to ring 10 people up to get one meeting. And a lot of really, really good salespeople still don't have the resilience to make all those phone calls. And it's probably not the most efficient use of their time either. But really recognizing the value of those SDRs, and making sure they feel valued inside the organization as well, is the third key element of the sales cycle for me, or the sales
great
process we operate.
So the next thing is the next challenge. You've gone through obviously a lot of different stages, and when I talk to clients, I normally say, up to 10 people, you're quite profitable because you're selling and you're delivering, and you would have been obviously through that stage, and then you would have to reinvest to get to 30. Some salesperson or something, a little bit, because you can't be everywhere, you can't deliver, you have to hand off activity, and then from 30 again, there's another bit of a plateau to about 60 to 90 people, then it keeps on going up. But the challenge is, every time you get to a certain stage, I see it when I'm working with clients, is they've got to take this point of view of, are we going to reinvest again in the business? Because you're going to have to lose some EBIT or some margin overall to keep on growing, and it's a reinvestment cycle. How have you gone through that process, Richard, to actually keep you reinvesting and staying motivated to your vision?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I think it's important to actually be quite conscious of those sort of that platform and grow, concepts. I think if you read books about entrepreneurship and setting a business up and everything else, they usually talk about revenue platforms, 5 million or 1 million, 10 million, those sorts of things. I suppose they roughly track to a services business, but I think you've hit the nail on the head with the description of people. Really, it's actually, for a services business, often about platforming a certain number of individuals within your team. And part of the reason for that is it comes with the challenge of operating by process rather than by people. If you've got less than 10 people, you've just got to focus on hiring 10 great people. I always described my role when I first started as a kind of bit like trying to be a Premiership football manager. I've got to hire 15, 20 superstars for a football team, and then my job is to make them all feel valued and motivated and work as a team. But when you get to 30, 40 people, then you've actually got to have some other people who are doing that motivating, and you've got to divide up by teams, and you've got to start operating more by process. And the bigger you get, the more process gets introduced. And then the challenge is kind of trying to avoid falling into the trap of creating an environment that is identical to the one they all don't want to work in. Because
Sure,
there's a reason they want to work in a niche provider. There's a reason they want to specialize and be surrounded by peers. And a lot of the time, that's because you've removed a lot of the bureaucracy from working in a big organization, that they could easily work in if they wanted to. So the challenge is finding that balance with introducing the process you need and not creating the monolith that they all want to avoid. I'll be honest, we've been through cycles of getting that wrong and then paring back process to actually kind of right size it, get ourselves in a place where people, we've got to make sure we get the right environment for people, basically.
yeah. You've got to always stay sort of agile and ninja, like ninja-like. You've got to be able to move as quick as possible and stealth,
Yeah, but then again, at the same time, you've got to try and create order amongst the chaos that creates.
For sure, I can imagine. So that's great. It leads into the sort of community question. So, one of the things I love about your business is it's really focused famous for its niche. And you can bring in people, you can hire people, attract people into your organization, and then you can retain them as long as well, because they're part of a community and they all understand what the community is about. So it's not about people only; it's about where they are in that community, as in learning with the skills, and they got people to talk about with each other with those skill sets as well, which brings the community together. Can you just talk a bit about that and how that important is to your business?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, first and foremost, it's in our values, the word community. So it's interesting that you've used that word. So our values as an organization are integrity, community, and expertise. So integrity is kind of core, obviously, to what we do as a business. And I've talked about the need for expertise as a niche provider. But the thing that pulls that all together is community for us. It means multiple things. It means creating a welcoming environment for people when they join us as an organization. It means creating a supportive environment where we lean into those experts that we've got and make sure that all of our members of the team get the value and bring the value to our clients that our experts can bring. That involves, those experts being available to the rest of the team and people knowing who to go to. Um, and I think it also means giving back to our community as an organization, making sure that we feed in those insights that we've got, making sure that our job as a consultancy is not to hide our expertise and make sure our clients pay for it. It's to make sure that we learn the stuff they need to know ahead of them, and there's value in them buying that from us. Over time, that means that we teach them the easier stuff, and so it's about giving back to that community some of the expertise we've got. And I think kind of there's a wider context for us as an organization, which is about elevating IT security within the business to be seen as an enabler. It's often seen by some people in the business as being a blocker, something they have to work around. And we want to get the IT security community to feel more valued inside their own organizations by enabling their business. And that's one of our promises. If people engage Turnkey, we're going to focus on helping them to enable their business and therefore elevating the wider function itself to have a more important role in the organization, more of a business partnering function.
So talking about community, with those different locations you have, you obviously got something it's quite unique. We've got different type of people, different countries, religion, different ways they work, different standards. It's quite a complex. How do you sort of work with that? I know you had a theme about a year and a half ago, but called it the Turnkey One. One Turnkey. Sorry, it's One Turnkey, and that was bringing people closer together. Can you just sort of elaborate a bit on that, because that was quite amazing?
Yeah. So One Turnkey for us was an initiative that tried to focus on connecting our offices and getting our wider team to work together as closely as possible. So we had I would say necessarily a specific challenge, but some of our country operations are more mature than others. There's more people in certain offices than others, and there are pockets of expertise in certain domains that are particularly strong. In our German team, for example, we've got product expertise that we don't have in other parts of the team, and making sure that we delivered promise to client and lean into all that expertise is about getting all those people to connect and talk to each other. And the first aspect of that is getting them to know who each other are, right? So we did a lot of kind of digital team building activities, and we still do lean into that, focused around diversity and inclusiveness, focused around health as well. We used a tool that I'd recommend to anyone called Gojo, where we could run global events focused around who's done the most steps, who's done the most activity based over the course of a month. And the really good thing about that tool for me was that it was very inclusive as to what people could get points for. So sure, you've got your gym out there getting lots of points, you've got your runners out there getting lots of points, but people were getting points for gardening, badminton, not just the obvious stuff, And so that was, and we built we built teams that were specifically curated where multiple people from different offices would be part of the same team, so they get to know each other. We've
Love
done some one-to-one coffee mornings where we just randomly select people from different offices and they get to meet each other, and just get to know a little bit about each other and just create some connections. And then we run a graduate program of our own, our analyst program, and we also took that global last year as well. So historically, it's been a UK focused thing where we bring 3 or 4. They don't necessarily have to have degrees, but
that.
analysts, we say, on to the team, and we've trained them and nurtured them through the team in the UK, and they've been some of our best performers, to be honest.
Great.
And what we did is we took that global and we brought on people across the different offices, and then we took them to Kuala Lumpur to do their boot camp training based on the model we'd applied in the UK. But it gave that cohort a team from the outset that they knew at a global level, and we're now sort of rolling that out each year, and with another intake coming in January, which
Good.
kind of creates that into the fabric of the younger generation of our team.
Sure, but keep everyone energized and learning. So that's great, bringing the human connectivity together. I think that's really good insight there, Richard. Thanks. Moving on to innovation. Everyone, clients expect you to innovate all the time. Because you're in tech, I suppose it's one of those things. Innovating. How is Turnkey innovating at the moment?
Well, I mean, the most obvious thing that we all have to grapple with within the services industry is AI and how to embrace that. I think that actually AI plays to the strengths of niche providers. I think that the generalist consulting that I'm using AI for, and I'm sure lots of others are using it for, just to get a steer on some high level direction of certain challenges, is probably the most threatened by AI. What we're focusing on though is how we can use AI to empower our teams to be more efficient. And I think the challenge there is working on ensuring that in parallel with doing that, you address your commercial model. Because if you sell all your services on time and materials and you invest a load of money in making your services efficient, but you don't address your commercial model, then ultimately what you're going to do is you're going to sell less time, and you're going to have spent money making sure you sell less time. But you mustn't shy away from that opportunity, because someone else will do it if you don't.
Percent.
So I think what we've decided to do is focus on applying AI to our managed services first and foremost, because our managed services are already on a fixed price model. We do about 30% of our services via managed service at the moment. Applying AI to those allows us to do them more efficiently. In time, we'll obviously be passing that on to our clients, but it also gives us an opportunity to learn how AI can be applied to our consulting services, and we can address the commercial model in parallel with that.
I think it's a hell of important to understand that commercial model, and it's a bit of influx at the moment where it is at with a lot of clients that I'm working with. So yeah, it's something to keep on thinking about, I suppose. How do you handle the competition in the market, Richard?
Yeah, so look, I mean, we've got, I guess, 3 competitor categories. You've got the kind of the big systems integrators stroke big 4. They're obviously sort of very large companies that do a lot of the type of work we do. I guess our competitive edge to them is our niche expertise and the fact that we're focused in the areas we are. We've then got the kind of other niche providers. There, I think our advantage is being a global company. The global nature of our business, the fact that we've actually broken ground in 7 different countries, is fairly unique for a services provider that is as niche as we are. And I think it gives us an advantage in a number of spaces, particularly in building partnerships with some of the large software vendors that are constantly trying to trim their partner lists. And, we can stand out as one to invest in because of the geographical spread we can offer them as a niche provider. I think our kind of offshore capabilities and the fact that we have such a substantial capability in our global capability center, I think that is also a differentiator over niche providers. They quite often have a handful of people in India or something, but they don't necessarily have a hub the way that we have based out of KL. And I think that is quite a good differentiator. It allows us to offer managed services. It allows us to be price competitive, certainly against the niche providers. And I think you've also got to recognize when it comes to competitor or competitiveness that it's okay to be more expensive sometimes. There's a reason why the bigger SIs, etc., have lower costs. They have scale, right? And you can't compete purely on price against scale because you don't have the scale as a niche provider. So you've got to be, if you're going to provide better, you have to focus on providing better quality services ultimately, because you will lose the price game. So you need to compete on everything but price in a niche space, I think.
Yep, that's good. So, you mentioned about 30% of your current revenues coming through from the managed service provider, efforts that you folks have been doing. That's because you've been building trust over a long period of time with these clients. And then you're allowed then to offer a service like that, because that is really difficult to do. Really, really difficult to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think the GCC for us helps a lot, and I think that's a cornerstone to being able to be serious about offering any managed services or retainer-based model. Whenever clients are looking at any sort of service like that, they're always comparing with the global giants like a TCS, a Cognizant, etc. But there are, our niche won't be the only niche where those companies are letting clients down routinely and not getting our area right.
For sure.
And so there's a premium, albeit a small premium, to be charged for getting these things right. I think you fall into a trap if you try and offer the same price. But I also think that you find a lot of the time those bigger companies will put more people against a problem that doesn't necessarily need. Needs expertise, not necessarily more
Yeah.
people.
Deep skill.
That's a classic play for niche providers is, yes, if you compare us on day rates, we're going to be more expensive, but we can solve problems with one person that these companies are not solving with three. And that's a message you need to reiterate constantly in those competitive conversations with clients. These guys are cheaper, but they're not solving the problem for you, and they're throwing more bodies at it quite often.
Yeah. And you built IP, you built your method and methodology, and there's a lot of things that you have built out there, which you take, to market to your clients. It's because it's quite amazing that some of these the big four, for example, they don't really double down on their methodology and the IP.
Yeah,
It's mostly on people's laptops. That's crazy, isn't it? Still
yeah,
is to this
exactly.
day.
I mean, it's really about getting it out of the experts' heads and into a process that can be followed by other members of the team. We've worked hard to build methodologies around the things we do. There's always work to do. The current exercise for us is to take those methodologies and look at where we can apply AI to them to make them more efficient. And again, leaning into our kind of niche expertise and making sure that the body of knowledge that AI tool leans into is something we still have proprietary ownership over. Otherwise, you're going to give everything away if you're not careful.
100%. The interesting thing is those big consultancy firms, they've never really wanted to build that IP, or they've battled to build that IP, that methodology, let's be honest. And now companies like yourselves who are agile enough that can take that IP and put it into an AI solution of some sort, it's going to actually accelerate, I believe, your growth, where the big type of consultancy firms will actually battle even more now.
Yeah, I go back to the point around generalist consulting. I do think the big four are great at what they do, but they have a reputation for for putting people in with less experience into solving problems. Often those are the sorts of problems that are getting solved by AI now. You need that level of expertise to be confidently challenging the output from AI and identify the false positives and the things that AI is saying that are incorrect or could be done differently in your environment, etc. And not just follow it blindly, which requires most of the time sort of 5-10 years of expertise in that particular area. As you said earlier, I do think it creates a challenge for the next generation of experts. Like, unless we continue to invest in those and recognize as a wider industry the value of them when they get to 5 years plus expertise, then that will gradually lose that kind of pool of people coming through with the next level of expertise. And I think a human in the loop is key to getting the best out of AI still. I really do believe it. The fact that large language models have introduced an ability to communicate with our computing in a different way shouldn't be mistaken for the need for humans still to be involved in that process.
Definitely.
I think large language models have largely tricked the wider populace that computers are slightly cleverer than they are.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of the technology they're leaning into is the same as it has been for a long time. We've been automating processes for clients for a long time. And actually, large language models and what we're calling AI today hasn't really changed how to solve a number of problems with automation tools that have been there for a long time.
Sure. Sure. I agree. Going back to the structure of your organization now. So you're the CEO, you've got a board, you've got country leads. Could you just talk a bit about the structure to give the audience what it looks like for a 200 plus consultancy firm that's global?
Yeah, look, I think the value of a board is a really important element. That sort of helicopter view, strategic direction for the company is key. To have a consistent viewpoint on that and to have the authority that a board brings to decision making. And we've got 7 different kind of countries we're operating in now, and the country leadership in each of those countries have different needs, different kind of priorities. But they also have shareholdings, and therefore they get a say in the wider business and how it operates. So I think that board structure gives us the authority to make decisions on behalf of the global group that are largely going to be undisputed, shall we say, or healthy debate where needed amongst a very broad shareholder base that would be quite hard to herd without that board. I think also there's a lot of value in bringing non-execs in at that stage. I've seen a huge value in non-execs. I think the fact that they're not in the weeds allows them to give you advice and guidance on certain things that would be hard to see from the inside. And it also gives them an independence and an authority around certain things. For example, our Remco is a really important thing that we lean into our non-execs for, being able to have genuine independence around, things like my own salary and, decisions around those sorts of things is important because it builds trust amongst people. And I think trust is actually the other key element to solving the conundrum of running a bigger business. You need to learn to delegate, and I've got a senior leadership team. I have regional leads across each of the kind of continents we operate on. So an APAC lead, an Australia lead, and then I do the US lead, and then I do the EMEA one. But I think the being able to kind of trust those people to get on with what needs to be done in that continent, is key. Coming together with leaders across the rest of the business as a senior leadership team, is the other element to that. But it all goes down to having some trust in those people to do the right thing locally and let them get on with that rather than interfering. I haven't got time to interfere, so I just need to find the right people to trust.
For sure. When you're that busy, you got to leverage, and if you can't leverage correctly, it's too difficult. So
yeah, and we've gone through a journey figuring that out as well. When we first pulled the businesses together under one top co and kind of globalized the company the way we did a couple of years ago, I think we sort of went slightly over the top with trying to create some global roles that didn't necessarily need to exist. And we sort of pared some of that back to create the efficiencies you need to create to pay for a global audit, for example, that we didn't need before. Intercompany transfer pricing, for example. You create all sorts of headaches for yourself by trying to globalize your company. And you need to stay lean and efficient still. And we learned that, over the last year or so, working through some things that we needed to do to bring back those efficiencies and focus on our markets, which is the most important.
So there's a last sort of question on that, the challenges the biggest challenge you've had of late. Would that be sort of bringing that team together, or was that transfer pricing? I know that was been a big topic for a long time and it's quite difficult to work out. And there's pros and cons to a lot of these things. And you've got to be sort of helping the business grow, but you also got to be working with people. So what's the biggest thing that's kept you up?
I mean, we talked about the AI challenge, earlier. I think, whilst I personally don't believe it's an existential threat to the consulting market, I think it is for anyone who's just going to ignore it and expect things to carry on the way we were for the next few years. So, getting that right, feeding that into our business and how we operate, getting the right amount of attention going into it whilst keeping the business running has been a challenge. And to be honest, the other big challenge for us is kind of responding to the slowdown in the consulting market generally last year, which has turned around as a sort of, I think they're probably interrelated. I think last year a lot of companies were thinking, well, if I just sit back for 6 months, AI is going to solve all my problems and I won't need any consulting. And then they've kind of come to the realization that even if that might be the long-term goal, we're quite a few years away from that yet, and they still need consulting. And so I think over the last 6 months, we've seen, things come back from that. That responding to that, making sure that we stay lean and that we, have been primed for the bounce back that we've seen over the last few months, has definitely been one of my key challenges over the last year, and in combination with what I think is probably the underlying cause of how we weave AI into our services to respond to that.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Thanks for that. Last question. Anyone that wants to aspire to be an IT services business owner, any sort of last nuggets of gold for them, or any thoughts?
Look, I think at the end of the day, like, you've just got, I think entrepreneurship is about acting. It's about getting on with doing something about it. If the number of people you talk to, oh, I'd love to be an entrepreneur, it's like, well, you may or may not be successful, but you'll never know if you don't try. So, for me, it's about kind of sticking your neck out a bit. It's about being tenacious. It's about sort of actually taking the steps needed to do something about it. And you know what? The other thing, I think I've got various people throughout my career who've helped me, whether I expected them to or not. The fact that I asked them to is the kind of golden thread that knits them together. So actually coming back to acting again, I don't know, if you're in a contract and you're thinking, well, could I run my own business? Well, the first thing to do is to ask some of the people around you that you work for whether they would trust you and support you in doing that. Would they allow you to replace yourself with the guardrails you would put around that to make it happen? Would they give you that project to run as an outcome rather than as something they contract your time for? You can craft win-wins as well if you get your sort of mindset commercially, as if you're operating as a contractor right now, then you've got to see it from the client side. Do they really want to contract you for 3 or 6 months every single time, even if the project might take 2? Now, they might keep giving you extensions, but if you say to them, well, I'll charge you what I would have charged you for 2.5 months, then you've got a win-win there from the outset, and maybe they'll trust you for the outcome. So I think it's about acting. It's about, asking people to help and putting yourself out there and giving it a go, really, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks very much, Richard. Appreciate your time once again, and you've got an amazing story, and hopefully Turnkey keeps on going, up like a rocket. So well done. Keep it up. Thanks for your time. Thanks much. Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us on IT Mastermind Talks. Don't miss out on our next episode. Hit the follow button and stay updated. Want to be our next podcast guest? Contact us and share your expertise with our audience. Visit www.itmastermindtalks.com for more information.